Hello, and welcome everybody to the new Equity in Energy podcast. We're joined today by our very own homegrown local founder, Dr. Frazier of Obatala Sciences. How you doing, Dr. Trivia?
Good to be here. How are you?
Good, man. It's good, and it's absolutely great to have you here. We've had you do some of our community spotlights at a couple of our local events, but it was really good to have a chance to catch you for, one of our on our national platform and just kind of learn a little bit more about what you do and growing up in New Orleans, and then, just everything that you've done with Obatala Sciences.
Yes, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. I enjoyed the spotlight, and I'll say on the intro, you had me doing a little dance. I wanted the second line in my seat.
Yeah,
The
man.
music is good.
Yeah, we got a little second line for the intro. Super excited about that. I'm gonna have to get me a little handkerchief
Yeah,
and just we're gonna come in on the second line.
there you go.
Yeah, man. So tell us a little bit about growing up in New Orleans.
Oh, New Orleans has my heart in so many ways.
Mm,
Growing up, so I grew up in the lower Ninth Ward. My family church was in the upper Ninth Ward.
okay.
And, what I distinctly remember is us having everything that we needed in the Ninth Ward, the shopping, the food, the people, the experiences, that I had were all, recognizing that we have our community, we had our community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, I think about that whenever I'm traveling and I get a response from people that, they'll find out, okay, you're from New Orleans. I hear the accent, but it's just so unique. It's such a different place.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I've come to appreciate so much more over the years as I've done traveling and, experienced what others see on that other side of us having that hospitality.
Yeah. And it's funny because I used to always worry about the hospitality side, but what I think that has evolved into the strengthening of our community now, because I think we're probably one of the last few places. I had this conversation, with someone else, and it's not about belief system. It's just scripture, and it's just the way the scripture lays out. It
Mhm.
says that you would know the love that they have for each other by the fact that they will greet each other with a hug and a kiss. And I think that, if you come here, if you've been around here just a little while, you know that everybody greets each other with a hug and a kiss on the cheek. It's
That's
just,
right.
and I think that makes us super, super unique.
Yeah.
Um, and, 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 and it's not bad to say. I think it's a very loving place. Um, and I think that we embrace those that come to hang out with us,
Right. It's genuine.
It's
You
genuine.
can
There
feel
you
it. It's
go.
genuine. Yep.
Genuine. Genuine.
Yep.
So, ask my favorite New Orleans question. What high school did she go to?
Yes, I love that question. As a New Orleanian, right?
Yeah,
Yes, I attended the great St. Mary's Academy,
the great.
the great St. Mary's Academy, unmatched,
Come on.
none other. And I'm so proud of St. Mary's and the accomplishments that we've made. The Maryites, we know each other, we support each other no matter where we go. And it's a sisterhood, and that's something that is instilled in you from the moment that you hit the door.
Yes.
It's understanding that there's order to everything. I still walk to the right like a true Maryite,
Wow.
understanding and appreciating that there's value that others can bring.
Mhm.
One of our religion classes, what we were taught was there's good in the worst of us, there's bad in the best of us. So it behooves none of us to talk about the rest of us.
Wow.
And, that foundation of being centered, being grounded, and appreciating who you are as a young lady, I
Mhm.
think is extremely valuable in addition to the great educational, exposure that we had.
Yeah. And in this past, I think about 2 years ago, we had the two young ladies who actually came out and saw the Pythagorean theorem.
Yes.
That was really good. That was really amazing to see.
Yes. And I couldn't be prouder. I mean, I was sharing it wherever I could with whomever I could.
Yeah.
Was a theorem that they were able to prove using trigonometry and algebra 2. And it stumped mathematicians for over 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, for our young ladies to make that breakthrough. But the thing that I thought that was so valuable, and it was just very accurate, it was spot on, was when one of the staff members said, it's amazing, but, this is the level of intellect and genius that we deal with on a daily basis at St. Mary's Academy.
Mm.
That there's so much potential with each and every young lady that walks through the door.
Yes.
And it's an appreciation that no matter where you are, where you come from, if you receive the same opportunity as the next person, if you are invested in and you understand that you're invested in, you recognize that you'll to, work to show thyself approval.
Yeah.
And you can do great things, accomplish great things.
Man, so I like that. So from the gate, so the first things you learn is the sky's the limit and there's limitless opportunities.
Yep. And it's expected of you. That's the other piece, right?
Yeah.
You can be told something all day, but to experience it and to see that that's expected of you just to perform your best,
Hmm.
I think that makes even more of a difference.
Okay. So we got a core education, high school education at St. Mary's, and then you go on to do multiple degrees. I'm gonna give a quick shout out to Dillard University because I think that's where you started.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Shout out to my like go blue.
That's right. Blue Devils.
So and and we talk about multiple degrees like it, and it was crazy. Most of the schools you went to have been right here in our city, right? Dillard,
Yes.
the Tulane, and
Yes.
was there
In
another school?
Pennington for postdoc.
Tennessee Postdoc.
In Baton Rouge. I'm truly a product of New Orleans, truly a
Yeah,
product of Louisiana.
yeah,
And that's something that again I've come to appreciate and value more as I've gotten older and had my experiences both professionally and personally.
yeah.
But truly I can say I received my foundations from Dillard, from
Mhm.
St. Mary's, from Dillard, and was able to matriculate through and really apply myself within a multidisciplinary area, graduating and getting those experiences at Tulane and at Pennington.
Yeah, and able to get everything that you needed from the very soil that raised you up.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think that's a message that we also want to get out to, a lot of our students and to founders. There is a pathway of getting everything that you need, right here in the state as well. Um,
Right.
and some opportunities you just got to create for yourself, though,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. It wasn't easy.
Yes.
But what I do share with everyone is that the road is never easy.
Hmm.
When you're traveling the road, anything worth having is worth fighting for, is worth working for.
Yes.
And I just shared my personal experience with a young lady. I was taking my mother to the grocery store,
Hmm.
and we were checking out, and the cashier asked me. She said, "If you don't mind, I want to ask you, what is it that you do?" And I told her, I was the founder of, and I run a biotech company. And she said, I kind of got the sense that you did something that is, a professional, you're
Yeah.
in a career, right?
Yeah.
She said, I could just tell by your demeanor. She said, I hope that I can do something with myself. I said, well, you will. You
Yeah.
want to, and you will. And I also shared with her the fact that my first job was at Winn-Dixie, that
Oh,
I
no.
worked as a cashier, and she was like, whoa. I said, yes, ma'am. And, I worked from junior year of high school until I was a junior at Dillard, my
Oh, wow.
undergraduate
Okay.
year. And I left because I was given an opportunity to receive pay for serving as a tutor
Uh-huh.
during as part of the LS Lamps scholarship program. Shout out to Dr. Darwish, Dr. Abdallah Darwish in the physics program, who was my mentor.
Yeah.
And, he said, you can get paid doing what you love. You can leave that job at Winn-Dixie. But I'm proud of the fact that I started there because I learned the value of hard work. I did it to support myself because I knew my parents, couldn't afford to buy me a vehicle and, those types of things. I come from humble beginnings.
Hmm.
So, always recognizing where I come from. And so I shared with her, you can definitely make a create the path for yourself,
Hmm.
right? It's believing in yourself and literally putting one foot in front of the other, walking towards those doors.
Yeah.
And when there's an opportunity, don't be afraid to walk through it.
I like that, man. I think that and it's cool. That's something that does happen here a lot. And I think if you're in the line and somebody, if they think you're somebody, or if they want to communicate with you, people will ask you questions about you and where you're from,
Yeah.
right in the grocery store line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing I do like about this community. People aren't shy; they definitely will reach out. And they want to talk to you. So you mentioned your mom. I wanted to because that's kind of how we got to the space of you going in on your dream with Obatala,
Yeah.
right? So can we kind of tell that story as we kind of get into the Obatala Sciences story? But I wanted to talk about what motivated you to kind of move in that space of health and wellness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the things that, as I do also share, that as great of a city that we live in,
Yeah.
as great of a state that we live in, we're also in what's called Cancer Alley. We're also ranked in the top three. We're neck and neck, competing for the top spot with Mississippi in terms of metabolic disease, diabetes, and obesity prevalence, and the impact there when it comes to cardiovascular disease, and some of the other metabolic disorders. And, that's a part of what we do at the company. We are truly advancing the next generation of therapies in that space. But, when we talk about my why, I often, share the story of my mother. She suffered for many years with this painful disease. It's a genetic disorder. It's a bone disease called Paget's disease.
Mm-hmm.
And it essentially is when the bones remodel, usually our bones respond to our environment. We're walking, our knees respond, our legs respond, and our bones remodel on a daily basis. And people don't really realize that, right? Because when things do what they're supposed to do, you don't notice it.
Yeah.
But with Paget's disease, the bones don't remodel in the right proportion. And so the spongy bone is more prevalent than the solid bone.
Mm-hmm.
And that causes an increased risk for breaks. People develop osteoporosis and osteoarthritis, inflammatory conditions where the joints start to swell. They're very painful. And often there are deformities as that type of bone just grows in different places. And so, the thing that was interesting about it, the more I learned, is that disease is more commonly diagnosed in males of European descent who are older than 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother was diagnosed with it at the age of 40. And it took 10 years for her to get an accurate diagnosis. She was being treated by the side effects, given Fosamax and other, therapies, prescriptions that are basically for treating the inflammation or treating the pain. And it was a visiting physician at Charity Hospital that saw my mother and told her the reason why it took us so long for you to get an accurate diagnosis is because we're just not used to seeing this in women and women under the age of 50 of African American descent. And she started to ask, well, how did I get this? And more specifically, German descent in terms of more the common diagnosis. And so, that was something that stuck with me. Looking at the pain and the suffering that she went through, how long it took for her to get a diagnosis, and still that there is no cure for Paget's as a genetic disorder. We're still just treating the symptoms.
And so,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just thinking about. You said Paget. Paget. Yeah. It gets misdiagnosed most of the time, more like an osteoporosis type concept.
Yep.
Okay. And when you have somebody that young in the age of 40, it's too early for them technically to begin osteoporosis.
Right. Exactly.
So it's going to be the last thing that they would get diagnosed with.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's, more common in older individuals. It's considered to be an aging disease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that experience, how does that experience kind of brings us over to the co-founding of Obatala?
Yeah, yeah. So, the connection is, and really it was a realization that it's the lack of data. When we look at the data that has been accumulated over the history of therapies that are at market, 75% of that data has been collected in men.
Okay.
And a greater percentage of that data has been collected in white men, white
Yes.
males.
Hmm.
And, it's a lack of representation at the clinical level and the preclinical level,
Yeah.
where it's just no understanding of the contribution that racial ethnic background makes to the human response, to human biology, the differences that are there, the differences as we look across sex, gender, and age. And that's what we do at the company. We are working to change the dynamic, bringing access to that data.
Yes.
And, when we have more insight and we have more of an understanding of the differences across demographics, then we can start to really dig deeper
Right.
into understanding the mechanism of action when it comes to these diseases, how they form, how they're jumping across what we, consider to be barriers of age or barriers of racial ethnic background.
Hmm.
And we're just starting to scratch the surface there. On the federal side, there's even a push for the inclusion of sex as a biological variable, the inclusion of diversity when it comes to designing and implementing clinical trials. And so, we're basically saying, here's the data. Let's start off with having more insight about Black women,
Yeah.
about Black men,
Yeah.
and then let's make better therapies knowing those differences.
Yeah. It's something. Spent some like 10 years in the pharmaceutical field, and most of the studies that we carried had little representation of um, minority populations across the board, be it black, be it brown,
Yep.
um, anything other than white male or white female patient population.
Yep.
And we were talking about this drug for the general population, but most of the studies were on a very specific
Yep.
population, right?
Yep.
So what you're actually doing is you're saying like, well, let's look at a more diverse pool, and let's really hone in on how these therapies are either going to react or not react or not do what they're supposed to do inside this patient population.
Right. Right. Let's get that snapshot. You know, there are always going to be limitations when we look at research, when we look at pharmaceutical development in terms of what we understand. The more we think we know, the more we find out that we don't know about the body.
Mm-hmm.
That said, there are ways for us to incorporate diversity at the cellular level, incorporate diversity when it comes to the patient populations that we're treating. Why not? Why not test the therapy in an older and a younger population
Mm-hmm.
if the therapy is targeting the aging, right? Reversing the signs of aging or treating an aging disease. Why not include an African American, cohort and receive data from those individuals if you're advancing a therapy that is targeting cardiovascular disease,
Mm-hmm.
which significantly impacts the African American population? Why not include the Hispanic population, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're 8 times more likely to die from cardiovascular disease, the impacts of diabetes and the side effects there under syndrome X. And so we need to include these populations that are much more susceptible
Mm-hmm.
to these diseases when we're designing therapies to, target them.
And I know that your research is actually looking at bringing all these populations, bringing this diverse population to the table, but doing it in a very, very safe way. So can you kind
Yes.
of tell me about some of the advancements that have been taking place in that space that has allowed you to do what you do.
Yes, yes. What we're doing, so I'll start off with sharing the fact that the drug development process,
Hmm.
there's what we call this preclinical stage, where we're collecting data about how the human body may respond to therapies, but before testing in the human.
Okay.
Now, historically, that stage starts off with sticking cells to plastic, cells from, a patient
Hmm.
or from animals, sticking them to plastic, growing them and dosing them with a potential therapy, and then taking the most likely candidates, what we call lead candidates, and testing them in animals.
Hmm.
And from that stage, we're going from 10,000 compounds to 1,000 compounds, narrowing it down to possibly 10 different compounds. But we're testing in mice, we're testing in pigs, we're testing in non human primates. And there's been such a lack of the ability to mimic age,
Hmm.
older individuals, racial, ethnic backgrounds.
Hmm.
But we're taking that information from those animals and from the plastic, and then we're saying, okay, this is how the human body, these are the pathways that are activated in the human body. And then going to the preclinical stage, incorporating historically 75% males, white males, you know, white females, including them in the clinical trial stage and testing the therapies directly in the humans at that stage. That has been sort of the gold standard historically.
Right.
What we're doing is we are collecting samples from patients of varying backgrounds. So if a person has to get a knee replacement or a hip replacement, we get that tissue and instead of it being discarded, thrown away, incinerated, we recycle it. We
Yes.
get that under patient informed consent specifically for research. And we isolate the stem cells from it and we maintain the information about that donor. So their age, their background, that information. And then we combine those cells with this matrix that we make. We have a proprietary method of making this innovative matrix that allows the cells to grow in 3 dimensions and form tissue. So we're basically breaking down tissue to expand and make more tissue that
Hmm.
represents that individual at the time that they underwent their surgery.
Hmm.
The beauty about that is that we're now able to take those tissue models, what we call them, and test the therapies that would have been tested in cells on plastic, that would have been tested in mice or other animals. And we're bringing the data, greater insights about the human response before we even test in humans. And so it's a bridge between this preclinical and the clinical stage of drug development, but we're also reducing the time and reducing the cost to developing better therapies. We're
Hmm.
disrupting the process by saying, hey, let's test in humans, in a broader population of humans,
Hmm.
without testing in humans.
And you're recycling waste.
Yes,
That
yes,
part right there, recycling
yes,
the tissue. So now,
exactly.
your background says you worked a lot with like key opinion leaders. Is there someone in that space that as you're working that stem cell research, there's someone in that space that you have kind of followed more than someone else, or is there someone that you just kind of lean to as your personal key thought leader? Or
Yeah, there are so many amazing researchers in the stem cell research space, in the stem cell development space.
hmm.
And, two of I mean, I could just name key opinion leaders all day, but two of the people that stand out to me when I was an undergraduate at Tulane,
Okay.
there was someone by the name of Dr. Darwin Prokop,
Okay.
who was considered to be, and he just passed away earlier this year,
Okay.
but a phenomenal researcher who has contributed to the foundations of our understanding of these cells that we work with.
Yes.
But my co-founder, Dr. Jeffrey Gimble, is also a thought leader known internationally. People call him an encyclopedia,
Nice.
a walking encyclopedia. He was He was on my thesis committee
Okay.
when I worked towards getting my doctorate at Tulane, and also was my postdoctoral advisor at Pennington.
Okay.
And so I not only had the pleasure of observing and being in the laboratory, while Dr. Prokop was coming through, but then being mentored by a thought leader, and working in his lab, but also in our parent company, LaSalle,
Okay.
the foundations, which then became some of the technology that Obatala brought forward to the market.
Yeah.
And so, I will always give props to my co-founders, Doctors Jeffrey Gimble and Ziying Wu, who are phenomenal researchers, we worked together to demonstrate that there are stem cells in fat tissue,
Hmm.
where there was sort of this battle back and forth of whether or not these are truly stem cells. And this is an alternative to getting stem cells from bone marrow, which
Hmm.
is very invasive, very painful
Yeah.
as a process. And, the stem cells in fat tissue are much more abundant. And so working with someone who contributes to those foundations has always been, for me, quite an honor.
So again, it's cool. Again, all the resources are around you,
Right
right?
here.
From
Yep.
St. Mary's to Tulane, and when you keep saying Pennington, I'm assuming you're talking about Pennington at the LSU.
Yes, yes. So
Okay.
Pennington Biomedical Research Center is an LSU affiliate. It's a part of the LSU family,
Yes.
and Pennington is top ranked and has been top ranked since its inception, named after Mr. Pennington and his family. Um, in metabolic disease research. And so when we talk about some of the clinical trials that have given us our understanding of um, obesity
Hmm.
and how certain therapies that have been brought to market are used to combat obesity and diabetes as a progression, as a disease. Some of those studies were done right here in Louisiana at Pennington Biomedical Research Center. And it's known as an internationally recognized institution because of that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's get to the other side now. So having spent so much time in the space and working with probably would be considered more of a heavy traditional male um, um, uh, group. Tell me
Yeah.
what it's been like being a female leader, in that biotech industry, and tell me how have what have you learned, and what are some of the things that you think that you have had to uh, to kind of do in that space to adjust to working in a male dominated field.
Yes, that is a great question. And it's always a loaded question for me
Mhm.
because I get to, again, reflect on my beginnings.
Mhm.
I started out at St. Mary's falling in love with physics,
Mhm.
which is a male dominated field.
Math, yeah.
And, my high school teacher, Miss Marquez, a Black woman that stood very firmly on her abilities.
Mhm.
And, she asked one question. We were solving a problem, and she said, "This is simple. Don't overthink it." And it was like the light bulb went off in my head. And, without being told that it was a male dominated field, I instantly fell in love with it because of the core foundation and connection to mathematics
Mhm.
and the ability to apply all of those equations that were so meaningful and could make these contributions about things that we observe around us on an everyday basis. And so that was my beginning. And again, starting at Dillard, when I majored in physics, Dr. Darwish took me and the other young ladies who were in my class under his wing and said, "Be aware that you're a minority,
Yes.
but also be aware that that brings you value." Now, as an undergraduate and a freshman starting, in the summer, I didn't quite understand what he meant by that.
Mhm.
But as I started to matriculate through, And so I did a double major in physics and biomedical engineering. Again, in biomedical engineering, many of the disciplines in engineering in general are male dominated.
Mm-hmm.
Now, biomedical engineering is one of those where now it's maybe about 50% female in terms of some of the courses that you'll go through. But, back then, when I was in my classes, I was the only Black female in
Mm-hmm.
my class. And that was a weight of pressure that I felt every time I answered a question. I felt like my professor was going to judge my entire race based on my response,
Mm-hmm.
right? And make assumptions about, the capabilities, the potential or lack thereof of
Mm-hmm.
my race. Do I deserve to be here?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an added layer. We think about the gender difference, the gender gap within these male dominated fields, but also there was that racial ethnic component there
Mm-hmm.
that in some ways I also internalized. And it was going through that process, making it out on the other side, when I realized that there will be many times that I will be the only person in the room, or I may be one of a few in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to really understand what Dr. Darwish meant by saying that brings me value, because I've been in rooms where I contributed a different way of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
a different approach. And having my humble beginnings and foundations, I could actually speak to some of the challenges that others may face when they're looking to walk through those doors. I could also look back and say, here's how we can actually help the students that we're trying to target here, that we're trying to help here.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that would just be missed because people didn't have the same experiences that I had. And that's something that I really do appreciate. And I share that. That is one of the most important lessons, that no matter how insignificant you may think your contribution is, realize that there is a place that your voice does have value, no matter who you are and what background you come from.
I think it's, I like the way you said, Dr. Doris. I think shout out to Dr. Doris in your physics department over at Dillard too, man. Like he's doing
Yes.
awesome stuff with lasers right now too. I need to get back over there and get over there and check him out. But
Yes.
embracing the fact that you are one of the few.
Yep.
Um, Embracing the fact that your difference is the difference maker.
Yes.
And I think that's something that we want to get across to, even all of our founders. There's going to be times when, yeah, I mean, even, at OHUB, our job is to find Black, brown, underserved founders. But I'm not finding you because this poor little waif. I want you to embrace the difference that you bring to the table, embrace all the different viewpoints and perspectives that you're going to bring to the table, and then we're gonna go forth and make something great.
Yes.
That
Exactly.
right, because we're gonna be able to bring different viewpoints and things um, to the table that may not necessarily been at the table before.
Right. How can you make a change if you are following the same steps, doing the same things that have been done historically, not thinking outside of the box? And the beauty about, being that person that comes from outside of the traditional box
Mm-hmm.
is you automatically can think outside of the box.
You have to,
Exactly. You have to.
yeah,
It's, in some ways, it is a part of the survival.
yeah, yeah, and not a bad part. And I'm gonna share this story like really quickly. I've had the honesty of your professor, Dr. Darish. I had that with a manager, when I was in the pharmaceutical industry, and he was like, I mean, this promotion is really about there not being enough, Black folks in the home office, but that's not the reason. That may be the reason why you're going to have a great shot at getting this position, but that's not going to be the reason why you stay there, and don't make that the reason why they picked you, right?
Right,
You,
right.
and so regardless of how you get in that door, once you get in that door, it's 100% on you to show the world, what who in who has been given the opportunity. That's the best way to put it. Show
Yeah.
the world, as they said, what Muhammad Ali said, shake up the world.
Yes.
Get in there
Yes,
and
I
shake up
love
the
it.
world. Let's
Yes.
go, let's think about it from a founder's perspective now. So you've had a chance to get to co-found Obatala. What is kind of your mix of? I mean, this is a great idea. Everybody loves it. What do you feel like the mix of funding that you have? Was it federal? Did you go private funding? Did you do a raise? Like what? How did you kind of pull it all together?
Yeah, yeah. And I'll also say that's another thing that has been its journey here
Mm-hmm.
in New Orleans, in Louisiana. We do have a nascent ecosystem when it comes to the VC landscape here, private, funding. And particularly as we look in biotechnology, it's even more rare compared to other areas where, for example, the hospitality industry, things that we're known for historically. And I think it's amazing to see the money that has come, the infusion of capital to support our innovations in energy, our innovations in technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's been just it's past due, right? But
Of course,
it's
yeah.
happening, right? That said, we used a combination of things. The thing that was really good about our journey is we started out with a contract. We started out generating revenue,
Nice.
and
Start out
that's
with the customer.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Good job. Yeah.
We had a contract, and I say this, and I often joke about it when sharing our story. We started performing customer discovery, asking our potential customers, as folks in academia and industry and government, hey, what are your challenges? What would you like to see more of? What would help your research to move forward? And then testing this hypothesis that something that we have, these human derived materials, this tissue model would be addressing an unmet need, would allow people to test and really find out more insight about human responses to therapies in a way that they've never had before. And when we asked that question, the 50th person that we talked to said, you know what, I want to try that. And so we had a contract before we even had our letters of incorporation. And, that itself was a challenge to manage.
Yeah.
Without the infrastructure, being that person, being that contact, and making sure that the data was, secure, that it was addressed, it was delivered, that kind of thing. But, having revenue, it changes things in terms of, the capital that you're using to support your operations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, that said, it still requires a substantial amount of capital to advance, therapies and to really grow in a good way. And so what we have looked at is a combination of federal grants. So the customer discovery that we did was a part of this phase 1 small business innovative research. They call them SBIRs
Yes.
from the National Science Foundation.
Mhm.
That grant truly was impactful for us in helping us to generate the proof of concept data that we then commercialized to make this technology and bring it forward to market. And we've received several phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 is basically, at the time it was $250,000. Now they're upwards of $400,000 from the NIH or from NSF. And a phase 2 is in the neighborhood of $1.5 to $2 million. Sometimes they can be 2.5 million. And so that kind of capital can make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also been able to leverage the economic development efforts here.
Mhm.
And, we've been able to take advantage of the incentives that are there. So these research and development tax credits, every year we apply for them. And that has made a big difference as well, because this is capital that is supporting the operations, right?
Right.
And then we also, lastly, sorry, my 6-year-old wants to jump in.
Oh no, it's fine. It's a family show. How you doing, man?
How you doing?
I'm good, bro. I think I've seen you at an event before. Has he been out? Was he out at No, he didn't come out to the Essence Festival.
Oh.
No, I don't think he but he did come to another one that we had.
I feel like I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah.
Christmas party?
What is it?
Was it the one when you spoke early? When you spoke at, was it the Christmas party?
Yeah, I think, yep.
Yeah.
That was it, Mr. Clay.
Good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping in.
Say bye.
You said you were going to be in the office.
I know, but I'm in the other office. Close the door.
I won't keep mom long, man. I promise you I won't. That you definitely know you got multiple hats to wear, man. We definitely have multiple hats to wear.
I definitely say I'm mom first. And so we did venture capital. We continue to do that as well. And, from a structural standpoint, there are certain things we had to do when we incorporated the company. We are a Delaware incorporated company, for example, C Corporation. There are things that we've had to do infrastructure wise when we built the company to package ourselves in a way that we would be attractive to venture capital, to investment, and also in a way that they would understand, what it is that we're doing. And so getting the pitch deck together, sharing that story, and what it is that we're doing and why we're doing it, and what's the expected return. All of those aspects we work towards, really putting that story together.
Okay. So
close the door.
you definitely hit on a point, man. Bye, man. You hit on a point that I thought was really cool. The value of going into your process with a customer based on because you said customer 50, based on how thorough your customer discovery process was.
Yeah.
Right? Like that part right there. Can you talk about the value? I mean, this is a little bit off our script, but I definitely want to talk about the value of that customer development, that customer discovery process for you, and being able to obviously, like you said, go into your project with a revenue generating idea day one.
Right. Yes. I'm glad we're taking a moment to talk about that, because I do think that it is one of the most fundamental things that anyone in any business can do.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it is often underappreciated and overlooked. And, it's as simple as truly talking to people, asking, what is it that you're doing right now? And, if you have the top 3 challenges, if you could speak to them, what are they?
Mm-hmm.
And if you could have access to something that could improve, what it is that you're doing, could you share what that would be? Thank you for sharing, Grogu. I'm obviously a Star Wars fan.
He's saying hi to you.
Hi, man. How you doing, Grogu? I'm more of honestly, I like Yoda better, but it's someone's got Yoda.
I like Grogu. Is Grogu cute?
Yes, Grogu is cute, but Yoda is better. So, that piece, I think, and the thing that I also
Yoda
share.
Is better?
Yeah.
I think Grogu is better.
Okay. The thing that I also share is that it didn't just stop there. Customer discovery is a continual process.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you speak with a potential customer, an existing customer, someone who was a customer and even decided to leave, that's information that you can get from that person to help improve your product. And continuous improvement is something that every business owner and every business should be doing, constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially when those customer discoveries lead you to a client. That's the part I think that we got a lot of founders super excited about pitching it. I'm excited for them to, I want them to pitch their projects as well. But even as you're pitching to that VC, one of the most important things to the VC is what customers have you spoken to, and what are they saying about your product?
That's right. That's right. The difference in engineering, I love engineering from a problem-solving standpoint. I love engineering from a professional standpoint. We were exposed to professional development in ways that other disciplines are not. However, there are some engineers that feel if you build it, they will come.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think the lesson that I've learned, and know that I've learned throughout this process is, it in fact is the reverse. You ask, you find out where the problem is, and then tease out which of your skills, which of your resources can be used to improve and address the problem, the pain point. But you really have to understand what that pain point is in a way that no one else gets it, that no one else knows, for you to approach that problem in an innovative way and really solve the problem.
So now in your customer discovery conversations, have you ran across that customer who is looking at that personalization of medicine, that whereas it's evolved to the space of that therapy is really focused and honed in on the specifics of somebody's cell research?
Yeah. I'll say when we look at the needs with pharma, so some of our customers, we have pretty much 4 different archetypes. They extend from academic researchers, government research labs, biotech companies, and then large pharma. And across those, when we look at the challenges that exist, pharma truly does have the opportunity, the need there for, something that accelerates their understanding, right? How quickly can we get this insight? How quickly can we get this data? Now, quickly can we rule out and weed out the bad players?
Yeah.
Because, each therapy takes about $1.8 billion on average and 15 years to make it to market.
Yep.
And so, those have been the opportunities when we say, okay, there's a patient stratification, part of the process where we're deciding, we're figuring out which patients may actually be responsive to the therapy after we understand the mechanism of action. And that's where we can make a major impact.
Yeah. I felt like, when we went through with COVID, it got really scary because it felt like that particular the disease or virus was locked in on like specifics, right? If they were older, if their system was weaker. Like and I told them it wasn't, it had some very basic things on how you could destroy it, how you could clean it up, and but it had felt like it had a very specific thought process about what it did and what it was and what it was going to do.
Yes, the aging, populations, when we talk about age as a risk factor, when we talk about, as you mentioned, the individuals who had compromised immune systems, whether that's from a genetic disorder or some other reason, a disease that you were exposed to, there was a greater risk there for those populations. And then on the other side of that, with this accelerated pathway to developing the vaccines, which is thankful, and we're thankful in terms of how far we've come on the innovation side. But we started to see disparities in how patients would respond to the the vaccine based on, again, the patients that were tested in those clinical trials, in those trials. So we saw a lower efficacy, a lower safety, a worse safety profile in South Africans, for example, when it came to one type of vaccine versus another. And when we look globally, we could still see different pockets of populations where the vaccine wasn't as effective. And, we continuously see examples like that, where the more insight we have, bless you, sweetheart, the better.
Yeah. So, because I love the fact that we got the family in the background now. So this is a perfect question, man. As a mother of three young men, how do you balance, man, a family life and in your career? Because it seems like you have a very demanding career, obviously. So how do you strike a balance with all that?
Yeah. I've never been a fan of, and bye, baby. I've never been a fan of the assumption that true balance exists 100%. Like, you're going to take X number of hours for work, X number of hours for family. Now, there are some people who, stand by that religiously. And again, I'll give another shout out to a phenomenal researcher, a phenomenal faculty member, Dr. Hong Dai at Dillard University. He says, I take 8 hours for work, 8 hours for home. I'm cooking, 8 hours for my, things that I do that I love, that are personal. But for me, as a mother of three, as a wife, as a daughter, a mother, I'm so thankful my mother is still with us. My parents are still with us. And there are some things that I need to do to support my family, my parents. And as a business owner, and researcher, I have come to appreciate that there are ebbs and flows to, that dynamic, right? Where there are going to be some times that I can spend more time. Like today, I spent more time working on a grant, editing a grant. And, there'll be another time when I may have to just take a moment to bring my mother to the doctor.
Yeah.
Yet another time when I can, hear my dogs barking.
Oh, yeah, I hear them. Oh, listen, I already know. I'm in Crepton. That's 6 to 7 is family time hour.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing what they normally do. I just got you doing something that you don't normally do. I understand. We just gonna roll with it.
Yeah. And there are other times that I can take the moment to explain to my children what it is that I do. And introduce at the fundamental level this concept of research to them, or the concept of business, and being comfortable with those times where things can kind of blend at times, and really understanding that I'm a lifelong learner. It started in grad school, where I started a family while I was working towards my doctorate. And, that's the time that you get exposure to being a professional learner.
Yeah.
And so that's another lesson that I think, anyone that decides to embark on a similar journey, I would highly encourage them to understand that we don't have 100% control over everything at every moment.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Right? Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. So know how much you love the city, know how much you love this community, Louisiana as a whole, support you've gotten here. What are some of the, what is your hope that the impact that your work would have, not only our city, our state, but society at large?
Yeah. The thing that we're doing in disrupting this process, this antiquated process of drug development, and pushing and challenging the research community to think about diversity, including it and not seeing it as, a complication,
right,
or a variable that needs to be held constant,
Mhm.
but truly thinking about it as something that can be factored in study design.
Mhm.
You know, if we, and I'll actually claim it and say, when we start to see that happen,
Come on.
then that will be the greatest contribution that the company, you know, and all of the outstanding individuals, you know, who are working with me, who are
Mhm.
working to advance this forward globally, that we will have made. And seeing it in New Orleans, where, again, coming back full circle to where we started the discussion in terms of New Orleans, Louisiana being ranked top in the prevalence of metabolic disease,
Mhm.
you know, what that can translate to is better therapies targeting diabetes.
Mhm.
That can translate to better therapies that target cardiovascular disease
Mhm.
and better outcomes for our people. So, you know, knowing that those two pieces are connected, right? Where we have the data, we have the knowledge, now there's the power that comes along with it. It's the hope that I cling to.
That's it. And then what we do as ecosystem partners, what we'll say is the Obatala Sciences is the first phone call Big Pharma makes,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Before they make a move, when they're figuring out all the clinical trials, you know what? We need to contact Obatala Sciences and get them in on this. That's our hope for you.
That's our hope. I love it. Yes, that's exactly what we need, right?
Yeah.
On the
And
global scale.
on a global scale, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think as you go from culture to culture, things may vary a little bit more too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as our closing remarks, any advice for any of our young up and coming scientists, our researchers, you know, aspiring to go off in the biomedical field area? Any words you want to leave them with?
Yes. Yes. You know, one of the best pieces of advice that I received from someone who, you know, was very, very wise, and I received this from multiple people, is don't be afraid to ask someone for help.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to approach a researcher and say, hey, can I shadow your lab?
Mm-hmm.
Can I learn about what you're doing? I know nothing about this field, but I'm interested in it. And that's whether you have a little experience or none at all, you know, because that first step, that was the start to my journey,
Yeah.
reaching out and having people tell me no, but someone said yes. Someone took a chance on me. And so I always advocate for that. Be the best advocate for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out. The worst that they could say is no,
Mm-hmm.
but the best that they could say is yes.
Mm. So we're gonna leave everybody with be authentic, be curious,
Yes.
and embrace your difference as the difference maker.
Yes.
All right, cool. Hey,
Yes.
Dr. Trivia, we appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight.
Thank you. I mean, I had such a good time. This was a great conversation. You know,
Cool,
you
man.
got to see the boys. We got to talk
Yes.
about my beginnings, my journey. And so I appreciate you, OHUB, everything that you guys are doing. Fantastic work.
Thank you so much, man. The goal is to continue to inspire. So until we see you guys next time on Equity and Energy, man, we're out. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, man.
You too.
All right.
Yeah.